everyone.
Good morning.
All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for being here this morning. I'm Stephen Bader, Executive Director of East Bay EDA. We're very excited to have you all here for our 2023 annual membership meeting. To get us started this morning, I'm going to ask James Paxson, General Manager here at Hacienda Business Park, our generous host, to come up and welcome everyone and introduce Supervisor Carson, our chair.
Thank you very much. My name is James Paxson. I'm the General Manager for Hacienda, and it is a real pleasure to have you out in the more easterly part of the East Bay. Thank you for making the trek out here. It was shortly after 1990. I was much younger then and much earlier in my career, and the Pleasanton Chamber of Commerce invited Bruce Kern, who's sitting in the back of the room over here, who was the then executive director at the precursor to East Bay EDA, EDAB, to come and talk about EDAB's work. And he came out, out here to the hinterland and started talking about why it was important to dredge the Port of Oakland. Now, he didn't just come to kind of talk about the port. He threaded the needle for us and explained why in our economy out here in the Tri-Valley, we should care about this and why it was important. And I mention this because this is the type of work that East Bay EDA has been doing for over 30 years and why we value our membership in it. It's the insightful analysis that really brings home important information about the region, because some things work at a regional level in a different way than they do at the local level. And understanding that, especially understanding the economic dynamics, is hugely important for us to be successful here at Hacienda. So we are very grateful. I'm very excited about the presentations coming up today. I'm expecting to hear more of that insightful analysis, and looking forward to participating and receiving these reports from all of you. Interestingly enough, we're going to be getting a report from the Port of Oakland again today, so that story is clearly not over. Anyway, thank you all very much for coming. It's a pleasure to have you here, and I look forward to interacting with you in today's membership meeting. And now, let me introduce Supervisor Carson to the podium. Thank you.
Thank you very much, James, and for that revisionist history about East Bay EDA. And let me just say what Bruce Kern, I want Bruce to stand. Because, seriously. What Bruce did in the early members of East Bay EDA, and James kind of captured a lot of it, was extremely important to the entire region. I mean, if you think about it, at that time, it was the Port of Oakland, which was the economic engine for all of the activities that were going on here related to business. And to dredge, be competitive with shipping all over the country and invite those shippers from other countries to come in here meant that we had to go deeper into the ocean. Environmentalists said, no way, we're going to disturb the ecosystem, right? And so what Bruce was able to do was to bring together the top environmentalists in the Bay Area, as well as business and government, and work out a deal that we were able to do all of that to continue to keep that economic engine going. So I'm excited that Bruce is here today. I want to say thanks to all of you for taking the time to be with us today. I'm Keith Carson. I happen to be on the Board of Supervisors. Candace Andersen is my colleague from Contra, Costa County, who's been very active within East Bay EDA. Ed Vaquero's here, a number of the other officers. If you're here, would you stand so that people would see who the officers are, as well as the staff of East Bay EDA. Would you also stand? East Bay EDA is known as a deeply rooted regional economic development organization that was founded, as was stated by James, more than 30 years ago. And it's the place that really brings together everyone from different areas in order to try to figure out how we can be the best area in the entire country. To be able to bring together the 150 cross-sector members that we have of East Bay EDA from varied organizations is extremely critical, and we've been very successful at doing that. We have individuals from philanthropy, we have individuals from academia, from government, from business, from nonprofit organizations, all coming together with the diverse voices, the leadership of those organizations, in order to see how we can make this the best place to live, work, and grow business right here in the Bay Area. And as because of your participation and leadership and involvement, we've been able to do that very successfully for the last 30 years. One of the things that the East Bay EDA is known for is our events, and today happens to be the 8th event that we've hosted in the last 6 months right here in both Contra, Costa, and Alameda County. And so how many of you have had an opportunity to go to any of the previous events up to, wow, that's pretty good. That's a good turnout. And so we want to say thanks very much. We hope that you walked away making new connections, picking up vital information, being able to leverage that in whatever respective sector that you are involved in is something that we hope comes out of those events that we're hosting. One event that we know that's coming up is one of our signature events, the East Bay Innovations Award. And last week, we completed the nomination process for the companies and organizations from both Contra Costa and Alameda County across the categories shown on the screen. And you will see those up on the screen. And we put together an expert group of judges who have been reviewing the submittals. And in the coming weeks, we will make determinations in each of those categories for who will be rewarded and awarded and highlighted next year, 2024, March 28th. Mark that down in your calendars now for the East Bay 24 Innovations Award, which will be hosted in Oakland. How many of you have been to the Innovations Award? So you know it's our Academy Awards for business and the various sectors that we have here. There's a red carpet, there's interviews that go on. It's very exciting, so I would really encourage you to take time out to come and check it out. East Bay EDA also does a lot of work to generate original content and information for our members and our key stakeholders. Those of you who are familiar with our work are aware that about 2 years ago, really at our membership meeting, that we launched the East Bay EDA Forward. The East Bay Forward was a report that brought together individuals from UC Berkeley and other academia locations, as well as business, to kind of help us navigate our way through the pandemic, an area that nobody had experienced, at least in our lifetime, and bringing all of us together to kind of put the brightest minds together. Coming out of that East Bay Forward report was something that we shopped to all of the decision makers in government as well as business to embrace and collectively figure out how do we leverage that information so that we would have a resilient East Bay. And so we are still operating under those principles, and we're really at priority 6 right now of the East Bay Forward report, and that is to protect and invest in the East Bay industrial environment lands to support economic diversity. And we'll be unveiling the Resilient East Bay Project website a little later on in today's program. Now, events take time and resources, and we'd like to thank longstanding East Bay EDA supporters and members, and we want to highlight today, particularly one of our longtime members, and that's Bank of America, for being the sponsor for today's annual membership meeting, as well as Southwest Airlines for being our event gift sponsor. So one lucky attendee today will receive 2 round-trip tickets anywhere that Southwest Airlines flies within the United States. But there is a catch. You gotta be here at the end of the meeting to see if your name is cool. Keep that in mind, right? So be here until the very end. We're gonna have an incredible overview and presentation from Danny, the Executive Director of the Port of Oakland, as well as an incredible panelist that will be a wealth of information for you to take back and share with your organizations. Today from Bank of America, I want to ask Daniel Shulman, Senior Vice President of Business Banking and Market Manager for the Bay Area market of Bank of America, to come up and make a few remarks. Thank you very much.
Wow, I used to look a lot better. That's what the pandemic does to you. Good morning, everyone. I am Dena Shulman. I run the business banking group here in the East Bay for Bank of America, and I'm also a member of East Bay EDA's executive committee. And I want to thank Stephen and the East Bay EDA for putting on this incredible and valuable event for us today, and thank all of you for joining us as well. It's a great honor for me to introduce our keynote speaker today. On behalf of our teammates throughout the East Bay and San Francisco, we're pleased to be this year's presenting sponsor. Bank of America has been entrenched in this region and serving our clients, consumers, and business owners for nearly 120 years. And between the East Bay and San Francisco, we have more than 3,000 employees supporting our economy. As a part of this local economy, we're committed to this region's residents, to helping their families and their businesses thrive, and this is of course in line with the East Bay EDA's mission. As part of Bank of America's business banking group, we spend a great deal of time out in the community speaking to the manufacturing businesses that we support, and from that, we hear for the past 12 months, some of the consistent themes we've heard from them have been around enhancing supply chain resilience, accelerating and scaling up and the adoption of industrial technologies, securing the future of the manufacturing workforce is a very big one, and linking their businesses' values with social and environmental responsibility. We look forward to hearing more about the manufacturing industry from our experts today. And on that note, today we're excited to hear from Port of Oakland Director Danny Wan, who I had the pleasure of speaking with this morning. And he will talk about the recently released economic impact study and the modernization of OAK. Danny Wan has been the Port of Oakland's executive director since November 14th, 2019. Prior to his formal appointment as executive director, he served as acting and interim executive director and port attorney. His comprehensive knowledge of the port's integrated operations, coupled with his intimate familiarity with the regulatory, community, and public policy contexts in which the port operates, has been crucial in providing strategy and support in resolving significant legal and operational challenges. He is committed to operating a port that facilitates efficient goods movement, provides a convenient and positive airport experience, and promotes economic and community benefits for the residents of Oakland and the region. Mr. Wan was elected to the Board of Governors of the American Association of Port Authorities, AAPA, in October of 2022, and serves as the U.S. South Pacific Ports Delegate on AAPA's governing board. The AAPA is the unified voice of the seaport industry in the Americas, representing more than 130 public port authorities in the U.S., Canada, the Caribbean, and Latin America. Mr. Wan is also president of the California Association of Port Authorities. Thanks for having me today and spending a few minutes with me. With that, I'd like to bring Danny Wan up to the podium. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. And thanks, James and Supervisor Carson, for your leadership in this organization for many, many years, and Bruce. It's always very humbling to hear the story about being the exec director, about how the business community and the communities in the East Bay have come together throughout the port's history to recognize the valuable asset we have in the Bay Area and to bring its development into what it is today. And obviously today, it is my job to report back to you, all those folks who have helped the port, and report back to you what's going on with the port today. And I think you'll be pleased to know that it is still vibrant. It is doing its job it's meant to do, that many of you helped us do. Yes, dredging was a big deal at that time in terms of project to expand the role and the capacity of the port. Today I'm going to talk about our next generation. And it is many decades since the dredging project, and that dredging project, by the way, has doubled, at least more than doubled the volume at the Port of Oakland, the seaport. So that result, it is a very positive one, and it actually had a very big positive impact on the Bay Area. So I'll report back to you, what is the impact? And number two, what is our next generation? We are going to build for the next generation. So beyond dredging, we're going to have a couple other projects that we want to ask again, come for your help in terms of making sure that this economic engine, the port, keeps going. So I'm going to give special thanks to Stephen Bader for inviting me, and for Bank of America to be today's sponsor. And also, like I said, many people who have been helping the port and this organization. East Bay EDA, by the way, and also formerly known as EDAP, I think, that tying us together, making the connections between the port, the businesses, the manufacturer, the commercial, all the sectors of the economy in the Bay Area is certainly something that is very, very essential, because you want to see the connections. And by the way, we're in the Tri-Valley today. We recognize at the port that this area, this region, is one of the fastest growing regions in the Bay Area. And so it's very apropos that I come here to talk to folks about the importance of this region. And trust me, when we talk to our customers at the seaport as well as the airport, the importance of growing economies in the Bay Area, including the Tri-Valley, is not lost. People are looking at how do we serve the Tri-Valley and as well as the rest of the Bay Area better from the airport and seaport's perspective. So I hope from that little introduction you know that the port is not just the seaport, but we also run the airport, as well as the 20 miles of waterfront that is the city of Oakland's waterfront, is mostly under the management of the Port of Oakland. So we're not just the seaport, we're also the airport, we're also Jacqueline Square. Hopefully all of you have visited Jacqueline Square. We're also the Embarcadero Industrial Park along the airport. And we're also, many people don't know this, we have about 800 acres of parkland in the Bay Area, including the Martin Luther Shoreline Park, as well as the Middle Harbor Shoreline Park. And if you've not visited the Middle Harbor Shoreline Park, just remember those were Middle Harbor Shore, look it up on Google. I urge you to visit, because guess where the best view of the San Francisco skyline is? It's at the Middle Harbor Shoreline Park. And if you want to look at how the port operates in terms of how the boxes are moved on and off the cranes, the ships, go to the Middle Harbor Shoreline Park. You get both views, one of the ships and one of the Bay Area, the Bay Bridge. So do visit. What is the economic impact of the port that you've all supported through many years? I'm told I have a clicker, sorry.
Oh, okay, great.
Okay. Georgie, why don't you click that?
I got it.
We do want to make sure that we, every 5 years, test out, is the port doing its job? As you know, the port is a public agency, but it is also enterprise agency. Our job is to make sure that commerce moves through the Bay Area, but also it is very much our mission to make sure that we create jobs and economic value for the folks and the businesses in the Bay Area. So every 5 years we do test it out. Are we doing our jobs? And I'm glad to say that last economic report, we do seem to be doing our job. The 500 employees at the Port of Oakland, that's people that the port directly hires, supports the tenants, Southwest Airlines, you heard. By the way, if I win that, I can't actually win it because I have a conflict, so don't pick me. Southwest Airlines, and on the seaport, we have SSA, we have Everport, Evergreen, and we have many truckers, tenants, commercial warehousing, and folks that actually come and work at the port. They employ people. And then we have, of course, the airport, who supports the hotel, tourist industry, the rental car companies. All those folks hire people, and they buy contracts. They contract with small businesses to do their business. So that's the economic report we try to find out, the impact. So what is the 500 employees that Port of Oakland support? Well, we support the tenants who then hire and support the economy. And that's the impact we're trying to find. So all combined, all these sort of chain effects of the port, those businesses that depend on the port for their business, all told hires about 100,000 people in the region. So that's our jobs economic impact. And I'm glad that we're doing that job. We are producing jobs in the Bay Area. In terms of, even though the port itself does not receive tax revenues for operations, we do hope to generate taxes for our local governments. A very clear example is every time people park at the airport, you pay by the hour, by the day, whatever. 19% of that is a parking tax that goes to a local state government. And people who do business at the port also generate real estate and income taxes and sales taxes. That all told it's about $70 million of tax impact on the Bay Area government and state government regions. And then we try to figure out, well, how much do we actually generate in terms of personal income and in terms of spending? So where does it port in terms of generating people who buy things, buy supplies, who go stays at the hotels, and people who actually make their wages and salaries off of the port's activities? And we add all up, and that's about $7.6 billion of economic impact in terms of personal income and spending in the Bay Area. So I think, not to pat ourselves myself on the back, but we all collectively ought to pat ourselves on the back in terms of supporting a port that in fact is doing its job in terms of generating jobs and economic impact. So thank you very much. Thank you. Give yourselves a big hand of applause for this. So this impact, I think, kind of, I'm gratified to say that I read the Alameda County last time. There was a news item out that Alameda County earned a strong AA++ credit rating. Thank you, Supervisor Carson. We're very happy for that. In the Fitch's report, it actually cites the Port of Oakland as one of the reasons underlying the economy that supports the county. So again, thank you very much, but thank you for also letting us support you. So that's the sort of economic report. Now, what's next? I think today's theme is resilience, and it's very, we sort of operate the background sometimes. We debate on whether, Port of Oakland, should we stay low profile and just do our job and make sure we get people's goods moving, or should we be a high profile and tout ourselves? Well, COVID sort of told us what that is. When COVID happened, all of a sudden I became a very popular speaker. Not for a good reason, but people want to know, why is my goods not coming? What is it, why is my thing that I cannot get? Why is it stuck at the port? What can you do to anyone to get it moving? And of course, on the airport side is, where do we travel again? When is it safe? What's the airport like? So, talking about resilience, I think we learned a big lesson the port industry did, in that we weren't all that resilient in terms of moving goods, in terms of the system needs a lot of fixing when it comes to emergency situations. I think the industry went through a whole lot of discussion in the last 2 years about how we can improve that. And out of that, there's a lot of discussion about what is the next generation of ports and transportation of people in the airports look like. So I think that, on one hand, staying low profile is no longer an option. Now people know what ports do. You all know that now that your Amazon stuff, they either come to the port or the airport. So next time you don't get it, hope you won't call me again about that. By the way, interesting tidbit is that when the pandemic happened, we said what was some of the most popular items that people were ordering. It was modern flush toilets and gym equipment. And all of a sudden now, nobody's buying that, and they're all stuck in the warehouse, and that's why our volume's down, because you all bought too much of that stuff, and the retailers are stocked up in warehouse fulls of them, and they're still trying to get rid of them. So this time, just be aware when you go shopping for Christmas, that stuff was from last year. So please buy us up so we can get more volume to the port. No, so that's the resilience. We're trying to figure out, and I think we're doing very much so in terms of resilience about how to keep our goods moving, even emergency situations. Later on in the presentation, you're going to hear about another type of resilience, which is environmental resilience, which is converting our ports into what the next generation of energy use is going to be looking like. It's no longer going to be petroleum. It's no longer going to be diesel gas. It's going to be hydrogen electricity, and I think that is going to be a very exciting development. What do we need? What's our next generation of development? If we can go to the next one. So, there's a couple of projects that the port is doing that is moving ourselves into the next generation. And again, like the dredging, this is another couple of projects that we're going to need your help with us. That first is the airport. I'm often reminded when I come to these meetings and the chamber meetings, and last time was just Alameda, and the Alameda chamber is here. There we go. We always hear stories of businesses who locate here. One of the reasons they cite is because there's an airport nearby. And why? And increasingly it is because people who headquarter their sort of R&D development and business development here in the Tri-Valley, Alameda, or in Oakland, and anywhere else, they often have branch offices or manufacturing facilities elsewhere in the country. And they depend on the airport to really fly themselves to their facilities and have that connection physically with their various offices. And also, air cargo is a big business at the airport. Oakland Airport is the largest air cargo facility in the Bay, in Northern California Bay region. And is very high-tech, sort of high-value shipments are done through air, through the Port of Oakland. So we are a value proposition for the businesses in the Bay Area. The airport, however, and I hope all of you are going to raise your hand when I ask this question. How many have flown through Oakland lately? Oh yes, thank you very much. I'm very heartened. But if you fly through Terminal 1, which is that terminal that serves everything about South Airlines, everybody else flies through Terminal 1, Southwest Airlines flies Terminal 2, which was upgraded in 1980s, so it's not even that new anymore. But even older is Terminal 1, which is built probably last modernized in the 1960s, and when you go to that check encounter, you feel like you're in the 1960s. So it's not just that it's charming, but also some of the stuff in the background is actually starting not to be the best practices. It's actually lagging behind the modern technologies. So we do need to modernize the terminal, Terminal 1. And modernizing means, and every time I hear this figure, I want to fall in my chair. Just modernizing it is about $1 billion or $2 billion. So the capacity at the airport also, before the pandemic, we reached about 13 million passengers flying to the airport. And that was busting at the seams. People were sitting on the floor, people were standing, finding corners to stand in. We don't want to be there again. In that kind of capacity condition. So we need to expand, not only modernize, but expand the capacity. Just Southwest Airlines alone, looking at its future, they anticipate they're going to fly more routes out of Oakland, but not enough space, not enough gates to accommodate that. We're also looking at very much to accommodate more international flights out of Oakland, and know that this is the #1 thing when we talk to passenger surveys, like we need more destinations out of Oakland, because I don't want to fly out of SFO if I don't have to. And I know from Tri-Valley to go from here to San Francisco is another hour or so onto your trip. So we depend on that to capture your audience here at the Oakland Airport, and we want more destination from Oakland, which means we need to add more gates. We released the EIR on the street and in the comment period right now. Of looking at an additional 16 gates, up to additional 16 gates at the Oakland Airport. And that's important because when airlines come talking to us and when we say, could you please add more flights and add more destinations, add more direct flights? The number one question they ask is, do you have the capacity there? Do you have the international terminal facilities? Do you have the customs facilities? Do you have the gates that are wide enough for our big planes? So those are the kind of questions we would like to say yes to, and adding up to 16 gates will certainly help us do that. Now, today, a proposition like that is in the multi-billions. We're trying to figure out how to pay for that. Obviously, the other two is to get past the environmental approval stages and the regulatory stages. Much like the dredging, where we talked about, this is going to take a collaboration of a lot of business, regulatory, and government agencies working together to make that happen. So I'm glad that is the next generation of the airport. Next. What about the seaport? The seaport, like I said, we had a surge of, so during the pandemic, we discovered several things about the seaport that, people probably probably knew, but didn't quite emphasize. We discovered that we are a very important export port for not just the region, but for California and for the United States. What happened during the pandemic was that a lot of people were buying Amazon, and people were buying and buying and buying. So the shipping rates for imports from China, Asia to the United States, the rates per box shot up something like 10, 20 times. And it was, so the shipping company discovered that they make much more money doing imports than exports, because the exporters were not able to keep up that kind of rates. So essentially what happened was that people started, the shipping lines decided they were only going to do imports and they skipped the exports. What happened then is that the exporters from California, and guess what products those are? Some of that moved through here in the Bay Area, in the Tri-Valley. Ag, red wine, fruits, nuts, and a lot of that stuff got done. Yeah, it's the airport, no. It's actually my baby, but I just had a baby last year. So 2 months ago, actually. So what was that? Oh, so a lot of exporters discovered they couldn't get their products out. So we discovered that the Port of Oakland is a very important gateway for not just the region economy, but also for the agriculture exports that we depend on. And at Port of Oakland also is the leading port for frozen products coming out of the Midwest, shipped protein, pork, beef to many of the Asian countries through seaport. What the trend at the maritime industry is that the ships are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It is a trend that nobody actually foresee even 6 years ago. We would have said, no, the ships aren't going to get that big, but they are. One of the issues that at the Port of Oakland is that if you look at that picture right there, the ship, the blue lines, the ship come in and they go through the inner harbor, then they go to the project area. There's a big circle there. So like a cable car, they go in to Power Streets and they have to turn around and come back out. That's what the ships have to do. They have to go in head first, turn around, and then come back out. They can't really back out. So that's what's happening at the port area. So we have to actually widen that circle to accommodate the ships. If you ever want to come to the port and when one of these ships is turning, it's kind of amazing to see how much little room is available between the ship and the shore when they turn that circle. So we have to widen that turning basin, and that's, again, the next project we're going to have to do. Again, it's going to take the regional support and to sort of make that case that that's a another $250 million project that we're going to have Congress allocate money to help us support that. The last thing is a very exciting development as well, which is the next project. We are the Port of Oakland, I think almost by just the nature of where ships, trains, trucks, and people meet. we are going to have to be the center of a green energy innovation. What does that mean? Every ship, every piece of equipment, and and trains and trucks are going to have to switch from diesel and petroleum energy to green zero-emission energy, meaning hydrogen electricity. What that means is that we're going to have to, at the port and in the East Bay, we're going to have to come up with the R&D, we're going to have to come up with the technology, we're going to have to come up with the skills and the workforce to support that energy conversion. As I'm saying, when we talk about this, not just the ports are going to have to switch to our fuel, but we're going to have to become the center of a green tech innovation. Right now, you all know that green energy is something it's sort of like, it's kind of like that movie, Everything All Once Everywhere. It's like, is it hydrogen, is it electricity, is it battery, is it zero, it's everything right now. So you're going to have to come up with the research and technology to figure out what is the most optimal and for what customers, who's going to use what kind of fuel, where is the production, where is the manufacturing, where is the shipment, where is the offtake. All that is going to have to, of course, I know PG&E is in the house, right? We're going to have to figure out, yes, how we're going to get the electricity to where we need it. So all of that is going to take a lot of research and dollars. And the Port of Oakland is going to be very much in the middle of all that. You see this map, this is what everything everywhere all at once looks like. We have hydrogen, we have electric substations, we have solar rooftop, power, shore powered. We are trying to switch our tugboats to hydrogen or electricity, truck chargers. So this is what's happening. Very exciting, last week we just got news that the Port of Oakland is part of the application that the city of California sent to the federal government for, what's ARCHA stand for?
Alliance for Renewable Hydrogen.
Yes, Alliance for something clean hydrogen. And so hydrogen, that is a $1.2 billion project awarded to California, and Port of Oakland is a big part of that in terms of developing hydrogen energy in the state of California. And we're going to be, the port is a tier 1 off-taker, meaning we're going to be using that hydrogen that's going to be produced in California. We're going to have to figure out how to use it, where to store it, how to fuel it, what's the fueling station look like. The other part that the Port of Oakland is going to play in terms of this green energy tech revolution, in addition to trying to figure out how to do rooftop and microgrids for electricity, is wind power. You heard that there is an ambitious program, both on the federal and the state government level, to build lots of big windmills out in the ocean. And I'm told one of these blades is about 10 stories high. And so you imagine that you cannot actually manufacture that stuff somewhere and to ship it to the ocean, to the port, into the ocean. You're going to have to actually have to assemble manufacturing stuff on the shore because there's no way to move it somewhere else. So the ports are going to play a big role in that energy revolution as well. So the news is the Port of Oakland is indeed investing for the next generation. We're very excited, both in terms of our traditional business, in terms of the airport, the seaport, but also in the next sort of generation looking at green technology in terms of wind, hydrogen, and electricity. Those are all going to be happening at the Port of Oakland, and we hope you fly out of Oakland, we ship out of Oakland, but you also invested with us in terms of our turning base in the airport and green hydrogen and green revolution. So thank you very much. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Andy, for that great overview. I know people have tons of questions, and unfortunately, we need to move on. So I'm going to call up Supervisor Candace Andersen, Contra Costa County Supervisor for District 2, and also East Bay EDA Second Vice Chair, to transition to the next part of the program.
Good morning, everybody. As always, it is a pleasure to be here with you. As Stephen mentioned, I have the privilege of serving as a Second Vice Chair of East Bay EDA, as well as serving on the Contra Costa County Board of Supervisors. I do want to point out a few of my colleagues have joined us today. I want to introduce Fremont Mayor Lily May. And Lily, Where did you go? I know you were here. We have Hercules Council member Chris Kelly is also here. And last but not least, we have Melissa Hernandez, Mayor of Dublin, who is with us. So I'm really excited to transition us to the next portion of this morning's program that's going to be focused on Resilient East Bay, which is the name of the grant-funded manufacturing initiative that East Bay EDA started exactly 2 years ago. And so today, we're excited to announce that we do have a new website that combines a lot of useful information about manufacturing and goods movement industries that have continued to be truly a bright spot for the East Bay economy. There's a screenshot of the new homepage on the screen, and the site is now live for you to learn more about the manufacturing sector in the East Bay and its very, very important connection to our region's industrial lands. And so special thanks to East Bay EDA staff member Carlene Owl for her tireless effort. We've tried to launch a homepage and with a deadline. It's not always easy, but she did an amazing job. And so like all websites, this is going to continue to evolve. It's going to be a terrific tool for us to track regional activities and other work that is associated with this project. And it will be taking an exciting turn in 2024 as East Bay EDA works with both MTC and ABAG for our priority production areas. And that's where we want to see more jobs where we already have housing, which is critical to our transportation infrastructure, our work-life balance, and some other important things like that. These are lands that are zoned for future industrial use and development, and Contra Costa County, I'm proud to say, will also be involved in this priority production area with a focus on our northern waterfront, which goes all the way from Hercules out to Antioch. And we are going to have a brief overview of some of the research today by Dena Belzer, who is a principal at Strategic Economics, and whose team has pulled together a lot of very, very important resources for communities who want to grow companies in the sector. And following Dena's overview, she will be joined by some experts who really understand what it takes to activate, develop, maintain the building and essential infrastructure that enables us to have this industry grow and thrive here in the East Bay. So Dena, we're going to welcome you up. Great, thank you so much.
Good morning, everybody. And Dena, I just want to say my kids used to do that to me all the time when I was speaking on a panel. They'd call to ask me what was for dinner. So welcome to the club. So again, I'm Dena Belzer, President of Strategic Economics. We're an urban economics firm based in Berkeley. And for those of you who don't know us, we have a long history of working with East Bay EDA, including working on the East Bay Forward project that was referenced earlier. So we're very excited to be here today. As we said, I'm going to speak and then I'll introduce then we'll have our panelists. So I think I'll introduce everybody when we get ready for that. So one of the things that's been so great about this project is that industrial lands have long been a passion of mine. That tells you what kind of a nerd I am, because I think industrial lands are fascinating. And this was really a chance to dig in and really focus on one of the East Bay's key distinguishing factors. In addition to the port, the East Bay is the manufacturing powerhouse of the Bay Area. And we often get tied up in the tech titans of the South Bay and the West Bay, but the East Bay, without the East Bay, the West Bay would not be what it is. So I think we really need to acknowledge that. And the goals of this work were really to focus on key industries: manufacturing, life science, biotech, logistics, and transportation. So these are really the driving industries for the East Bay. We want to be able to streamline the retention and expansion of these industries. We want to be able to support the ecosystem of these industries, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. We want to, again, support these And without these industries, we can't support our workforce. So this is, in the end, really all about the East Bay's people. We started our work last December and have gone through a 4-phase process. The first phase was to put together this industrial market outlook, and I'm going to give you sort of a quick synopsis of what that research found. That was a typical data-driven analysis of what the East Bay's industrial economy looks like. Remember, this is not the entire economy, just the industrial economy. Then we developed a series of recommendations. We used this work to pivot into the second phase of our work, which is to talk about what the tools would be for supporting industrial lands over time. Because if we don't have a place for this industrial activity, the activity is going to go away. So I want to really acknowledge the fact that we had tremendous support from a very extensive working group, and I'm pleased to say that the working group got bigger, not smaller, over time, so obviously people were interested and engaged. We talked to our working group members in a lot of back and forth. We had focus groups, interviews, one-on-one interviews, so this work was really grounded not just in data, but really in what we were hearing from people. So I want to start by just giving you, again, a quick snapshot of what we learned in our data analysis. And our big takeaway is just exactly what Bruce Kearns taught this region in the early 1990s. I love that story, that the East Bay economy is an ecosystem. And that all of these sub-areas, we identified 5 sub-areas, are really a part of a system where businesses can get started through research and development. There are places for early stage manufacturing, there are places for mature manufacturing, and there are places for evolution. So we really want to start to really continue to build on this idea that working together, the East Bay is much stronger. That we are thinking about the life cycle of companies, again, innovation, expansion, retention, and that we're really pulling all parts of the East Bay region into this. Now we did a lot of data analysis, and we found that the 4 driving industries that we were focused on, I see you guys are taking pictures. This report is live. You can download it from our new website. So yay! So you don't have to worry about getting the data from these images. But I just want to say that the 4 industries counted for over 1/3 of all of the new jobs added to the East Bay in the last 10 years. That's all jobs, okay? So the East Bay jobs increased total by about 16%, and our 4 industries grew at the lowest amount at 28%. That's exciting. I've had a lot of things happen to me while giving a talk. Haywire, yes, okay, but we did work on the Haywire initiative, so I understand what to do if it happens. Our 4 driving industries grew by a minimum of 28% during the same time period. And even though in the US many people had disparate of manufacturing, in the East Bay, manufacturing led this growth. And I also want to underscore that life science and logistics had almost the same increase in jobs. So when you think about economic development, and cities tell themselves we only want job-generating industries, so we don't want logistics, I'm here to tell you that logistics generate jobs. So we also looked at this job growth by sub-region in our area, and the Tri-Valley area, interestingly enough, led the growth in life science, demonstrating the fact that these innovation industries, again, that are in the West Bay, are expanding to the East Bay. The facilities are here. James and I had coffee together a few weeks ago, and he was telling me how it's cheaper to retrofit some of these old office buildings than it is to build new space, and in a pinch, it's working. So there's a big concentration of the life science industry coming out here. But I also want to talk about the northern waterfront, again, from Hercules out to Brentwood. This area has been home to the legacy industries in the Bay Area. This region is not just about the port, but it's really about chemical manufacturing and a lot of things that were happening along the shoreline of the northern waterfront, again, for over 100 years. So this area is in a transition, and we are really looking to use this ecosystem concept to help have a just transition in the northern waterfront. We looked at the production of new construction, so not just jobs, but space, and where is this space being added? And what we found was that most of the space that was added was in warehouse and distribution buildings, and this is how Costa, the database, categorizes these buildings. You should think of these as general purpose buildings. Warehouse and distribution are the most flexible building stock that we have in the East Bay. All sub-areas that we were looking at added new buildings. Only the northern waterfront had a decline in jobs. So again, this is an area that we want to really focus on. And southern Alameda County and Tri-Valley added the most jobs. But one of the most interesting things that we saw was that you can have job growth without adding a lot of new building space. So we're seeing a more efficient and effective use of the buildings we have. Now, let's see. We're not advancing. Okay. One more. Wake up. There we go. Thank you. So one of the big things that we learned from this analysis, you see the tall bar all the way on your right? That's warehouse and distribution buildings. Those buildings represent the biggest amount of industrial built space in the East Bay. They also house the most diversity in the kinds of activities that are occurring in them. So as I said, they're the most generic, but the red bar is distribution and logistics. That green or yellow bar is manufacturing. We also have it looks gray here, but the bottom bar is life science. So you see we've got everything in these flexible warehouse and distribution buildings. So when you think about industrial land supply and development, remember that the building name doesn't always match the building use or user. So really key finding with this. So just to quickly wrap up on our phase one, we found that the East Bay, again, is an incredible industrial powerhouse. It represents a huge asset to this region, but the land supply is under threat, and this should come as no surprise to anybody. There's a lot of pressure to convert industrial land, particularly to housing in the latest RENA cycle. In particular, people are saying, where are we going to put all that housing? There's a lot of ambiguity about how we use this land, which we're going to talk about in a minute. So the zoning controls, the land use aspect of this is not necessarily particularly well managed because cities don't actually understand what they've got, that this is an incredibly important resource. So while we have a great asset, we still have some challenges. So just to reiterate, this report is now available. You can click and download the PDF. Now a PDF feels very old-fashioned to me because we've been working on the website, and it's exciting to have something. But data is something that is a fixed point in time, so this is a fixed point report. But I do want to talk to you now about the second phase of our work, which is to talk about this industrial land use implementation toolkit. And again, a very nerdy topic, but actually really essential. So we want to understand how to really use land use to facilitate the kind of innovation and growth and expansion that we're looking at in our economy. So for our section of the toolkit, and there are all these industry profiles and other really interesting work that was done, but what we did was to create this industrial lands toolkit, and again, talking to our focus group members, interacting with our stakeholders, it's divided into 3 main categories. The first is zoning and project approvals. And we learned that zoning is having the right kind of zoning, sets up the right kinds of approvals process, and it's actually pivotal to the preservation and renewal of our industrial lands. Second, we talked about planning at the district level, and why having sort of a holistic approach to an entire area really helps with the intersection between land use and infrastructure planning, which are also really essential. We need roads. We're moving goods not just from the port out to the rest of the country, but we're moving goods within the region. And we have to really acknowledge that and really think about that transportation piece. And then the third is this regional ecosystem and collaboration. Danny spoke about this, James spoke about this. Thank you, Bruce Kearns, for starting us off on this several decades ago. So that's what we're really working on. So just to show you what these tools look like, the zone, this is just the demonstration of that these are kind of what the tools are. Okay, sorry, I lost myself in my presentation. Okay, the zoning piece has a whole series of tools to help people go in and look at, to help communities go in and look at how their zoning ordinance could work better for their industrial lands. It's really targeted towards making project approvals work better, so that when an individual developer, business, or contractor comes in with a project that they want to do, they can easily use the zoning ordinance to do that. The planning and local infrastructure financing piece is really proactive. How do we, as a community, think proactively about our land use policies, land use compatibility, and the infrastructure investments that we want to make, again, to facilitate and set the stage. Okay, now I'm getting to the end. And finally, the regional ecosystem. So just quickly to preview for you what's on each of these pages, you'll get the name of the tool, a description of the tool, the objectives of the tool details, how the tools work, and then a whole series of case studies. And we chose to primarily focus on East Bay case studies because even though a lot of communities have some challenges, there are examples that where we're doing it well. And then finally, for the ecosystem section, we're still working on this. This is a work in progress, but the beauty of the website is that we will be able to do that over time. So, and I really, again, want to acknowledge Carlene's work on this. It's been fantastic. So with that, I'm going to call up my panelists. Oh yeah, so just what we've accomplished is the market outlook, the industrial land use toolkit, and then really this project is going to be able to leverage a lot of other fine-grained work. We're already rolling into some work with ABAG MTC that's very exciting, again, focused on infrastructure. So with that, I'm going to call up my panelists and introduce them. We have Mike McCarty, who's in industries, but he's also working very closely on community activities and really ensuring that the local people are benefiting from the kinds of activities that he's developing. He's really been a model in the work he's done in West Oakland. And finally, Ed Del Caro, who probably needs no introduction, but is with TRI Commercial. He's a philosophy major, so it informs, it was a philosophy major, so it informs the way he thinks big picture. But he really has a fantastic vision for the East Bay, and I always find him very inspiring when I speak to him. So with that, Mike's going to give his presentation, and then Ed and Joe and I and Mike will come up. We'll have a couple of questions, we'll have some discussion amongst ourselves, and then we'll open up for questions from the audience. And we hope it'll be really riveting, and you'll stay for the raffle. So, and we can win, so. Okay, thank you. Okay.
I was going to ask for a lapel mic. I was presenting at commission once, and in like 2 hours, I was asked to bend over more like 10 or 20 times because they couldn't hear me and they couldn't turn the mic up loud enough. So anyways, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Mike McCarty. I'm the manager of our distribution planning organization. So for context as it relates to this room, if a large load applies, if an application comes in for a large load at PG&E, it eventually finds its way to my team of engineers across all of PG&E systems. So, see, I'm being able to speak again. Hello?
Yeah.
All right, how's that sound? All right, thank you for back. All right, so my team of engineers reviews those applications. They make their way through, and we develop the plans for what do we need to do, what infrastructure do we need to build to actually serve the loads if it would otherwise create an overload today. So very relevant to this group here. So this little illustration here just highlights where my team lives. And so you start in the bottom left, think about this cartoon of the grid. We start with bulk generation, and then going up and to the right, we have our transmission system. So the transmission lines, if you can think about them as the highway for a transportation analogy, transportation corridors. The transmission system is the highway, and those off-ramps into the distribution system are our distribution substations. Those take the high voltage and step it down to the medium voltage that makes its way to the equivalent of city streets that ultimately find their way to the service, which I like to say is your driveway. So the service that steps the voltage down from medium voltage to low voltage, and ultimately for that line extension. And so the different processes that PG&E has for these different areas, you have our transmission planning process that plans out our transmission system. You have our distribution planning process where my team lives, where we plan our distribution system, and then you have our service planning process that works on those new business line extensions. And that's probably the primary PG&E contact that many people in this room have is on the service planning side. So I'm going to focus on the distribution planning process here and specifically talk to you about what makes up our complete forecast. How do we anticipate new loads? How do we predict where the overloads would otherwise be in our system if we didn't build upgrades? So if you think about here, we have our complete forecast here. On the left, going into that forecast is our CEC electrification forecast. So we are regulated to use a specific load growth forecast to anticipate an organic load growth. So that comes from the California Energy Commission's Integrated Energy Policy Report, or IPER. And that we use that IPER growth that includes electric vehicle forecasts in the last couple of years. We use that IPER growth, and we use load growth forecasting software to geospatially disaggregate that growth. And so we take into account land use data, economic indicators, and various other indicators to then spread that system level load growth across our entire system. So we disaggregate that across our system. Additionally, we also have those applications that come in that you probably all put in. And so those new business applications also make their way into our forecast. And dictate how we're going to plan our system. And then lastly, we have our long-term local forecast. And so those are our pre-application information that we may get from a municipality, we may get from a large customer saying this is what my load growth plans are. Those also make its way into our complete forecast. Now, if you think about that middle box there on the service planning, the service application request, and what you actually would provide to service planning, when we get those applications, we first look at, is there capacity today to serve that new load? And so we look at where is the load, how much is that load based on typical buildings? And I'll say it's very common for customers to over-ask for what they need. They may say, I need 5 megawatts, and we look at similar customer types and we say, actually, we think it's going to be 1 to 2 megawatts. And so there's a conversation with the customer about, based on typical customers, what we expect to see. So we may ask for questions about, what is it like? Do you have partners or similar customers in your industry that we might be able to look to in our service territory to predict that? We also look at the hourly load profile. Is your load coincident with the peak load of the system? For example, fleet charging, maybe the fleet charging is all going to be at night when vehicles are domiciled. And so, like a delivery van. So delivery van's out during the day, it's gonna come back at night, and we charge at night for those kind of operations. We also look at if there's any on-site generation. So is the middle of the day peak gonna be a little less? And then lastly, load ring. So is the capacity needed today? So you may ask for 5 megawatts, but initially you need 1 megawatt of construction power, or you need 1 megawatt for a particular building in your campus, but you're not expected to expand for another few years. So we can build the capacity to serve the long-term need while also serving the short-term need, maybe with existing capacity. Now, after we review all of that, if for some reason we learn that an overload would still be created, we might look at can we switch our system? Can we reconfigure our system today to serve the load? Or maybe can we provide a reduced load in the meantime? So rather than just saying flat out, no, you can't connect, can we serve 50% of the load in the meantime? And then also, can a customer shift their operations? So we've seen scenarios where a customer decides to start later in the day, or they decide to have a night shift instead in the meantime. It's a difficult conversation to have, but that's better than just flat out saying, no, we can't serve you today. And then lastly, we determine what work needs to be done, and we have an obligation to serve, but we also have a large pipeline of work across the utility, and so it's going to take time to build what we need. So when I say it's going to take time to build what you need, I provide this for context on different timelines associated with the work we do. So today, if we need to build a new substation, if we identify today that we need to build a new substation to serve load, it can take 5 to 8 years to build a substation. And the main driver for that is permitting and land acquisition. And I'll go into how you might be able to assist with that in the future. A new transmission interconnection takes 3 to 5 years. Additional substation capacity takes 3 to 4 years, and the main driver for that is material challenges right now, long lead time materials. If today we identify that we need to install a new transformer or replace a transformer, and we order it today, it can take more than 2 years to actually receive the transformer. And so that's really what's driving the timelines there. They're large construction projects, but they're impacted by materials. And then for new circuit and circuit line work, that can take 2 to 3 years. And the main challenge there is land acquisition and permitting. And then lastly, on the line extension and service planning work, that typically takes 6 to 12 months. And so here, if you kind of think you could go all the way up, and your project could trigger all of these, or trigger from the bottom, line extension work, all the way to new circuit, new substation capacity, and additional substation, depending on the scale. And so how can you help here? So I say this at every public forum I have the opportunity to say it. If you're undergoing an environmental impact review, talk to PG&E early in the process. I heard EIR from Dena, which makes me think we should talk. So if you're adding capacity at the airport, we might need to build distribution capacity to serve it. We may want to include, PG&E would want to be included on the EIR. It is much smoother. It is a much simpler process if our facilities are included in the customer's EIR than if we're doing a separate EIR. So talk to us, involve us if you're undergoing EIR, and I'll say, technically, I think you're legally obligated to. Also, partner with PG&E prior to purchasing land or building to provide guidance on available capacity. So I hear a lot from Dena. She mentioned retrofitting buildings. So an office building being retrofit for a different use case, an office building may have been less load. And so do we have the capacity to serve the higher load? Work with PG&E to understand that. Don't just assume that the capacity is available. Don't just assume that you can max out your panel because you may actually have to build capacity to serve it. And on that similar note, provide accurate load forecasts. So don't overestimate your load either. I already mentioned that. And then inform PG&E if you're willing to self-fund the capacity. There may be ways to accelerate projects. There may be ways to order that transformer early and get the materials going for it. And then lastly, I mentioned permitting a lot. If you're a city or a county, approve PG&E's permits timely. Work with us so that we can actually get shovels in the ground and build the projects. All right, well that's all I have for you. Thank you all.
Okay. So we're
Okay, now you can see us all. I'm going to call up my panelists and we're going to have our discussion. So exciting to be live with people. It feels so good, but I forgot about the perils of falling off. I don't have that at my desk when I'm speaking over Zoom. So, Joe, we're going to start with you. One of the questions that we'd be curious to hear from you about, oh good, there's my throat, okay. You work with a lot of advanced manufacturing companies, and there's a lot of interest in advanced manufacturing here in the East Bay. So could you talk a little bit about what the companies are looking for, what kinds of buildings they're looking for you to develop, and also what constitutes a good location for various kinds of advanced manufacturing?
Yeah, I mean, the simple answer to what are these companies looking for is a lot. And rightfully so, they have very diverse businesses and they need a lot of different functions and flexibility with their buildings. But, we talk about costs, but interestingly enough, over the last 2 years, 2021, 2022, cost was not a big issue, even though we saw massive construction inflation, rents were keeping up, capital was readily available. This year, costs are becoming a much bigger deal because of lack of capital. And so tenants are now looking for us, their landlords, to provide turnkey solutions using our capital. And, because these tenants are having a hard time getting capital, it's hard for us to get capital as well. So, we really need to work together to put that capital stack together to develop these facilities. And still, time is very important, more so today with interest rates the way they are. Time is very expensive, and so there's a lot of things we in this room can do to try to wring time out of the process. And I could pick on the guy sitting next to me, but I won't. But
He's taller than you.
he is everybody's taller than me. But amenities, we talk about, Dena mentioned community and trying to, these companies don't want to be just in a traditional industry-only business park, suburban-only business park. So I would encourage, as we think about our plans, as we think about future, we need to amenitize these projects. We need to integrate them with amenities, with services, with transportation. So preserving industrial lands near housing, near transit is important. So these are some big things we're dealing with today.
Right. It's super interesting about the integrated capital stack between the developer and the company. So that's something maybe we'll come back to. So Ed, we are kind of in a slowing phase. We know that the office market is at the bottom of the bottom.
There is no office market.
There is no office market, yes, thank you. But life science is also slowing down, and that seemed like at the peak, it seemed like the demand for life science was infinite, but not so much anymore, particularly in the West Bay. So could you talk a little bit about where you see the market going for industrial buildings and even office buildings that have the potential to be converted in the next, say, 12 to 24 months? What do you see on the horizon?
Well, some brief points. By the way, as a land broker, and I live in the future 4 to 5 years, so I think about where infrastructure is going, zoning, etc. Some brief points. Yes, industrial has slowed down relatively. In English, the Federal Reserve said we want to fight inflation, so they told the banks to lend less. They raised interest rates. So by definition, capital is more expensive, so the unintended consequence is slower activity, as Joe mentioned. Second, by the way, as slow as industrial is, I'm also an area manager. Among managers, we have a joke. I will trade 3 of my office brokers for 1 industrial broker. That's where the activity is. So office is now 20 to 30% vacant in a lot of cases. Some of that office can be converted. Problem with a lot of the office is it's obsolescent. You just can't put a life science building that needs, we had an earthquake. Did anybody feel it? That's because this building has seismic qualities. A lot of office buildings are not seismically updated. So there you just can't put a life science. Imagine having LASIK surgery in an old office building. So the laser's doing this. So you can't. So a lot of the buildings have to be retrofitted or torn down. So if you have a 50-year-old wood office project, that can't be converted. That should be torn down for residential. In terms of where the market is going, it's going to be more of the same for the next 12 months until inflation's cured. The demand is there, the Bay Area. By the way, when we say East Bay now, Dena, we say the greater East Bay. We took over Solano County and
I stand corrected.
and Central Valley because the true manufacturing trade port radius is 60 miles. So Fairfield is just as important, and Benicia as is Lathrop and Modesto, as the commuters are coming over. And then what cities should be doing, so here's a question. If I have 10 engineers in cubicles, 4 3D printers, a truck door to move the product out, is that industrial, office, or flex? Okay, most cities have mutual exclusive yesterday planning. So heads off to Fremont, who now has 90-day over-the-counter permits. Cities should be doing that. If you know you're going to have this kind of a use, plan for it, approve it. Don't have people jump through it.
I just want to add too, when you mentioned life science and some of the manufacturing is slowing down, it's not slowing down because there's less science, there's less manufacturing. It's slowing down because there's no capital. And the fundamentals in these markets are still very strong. And so, we still need to be preparing and planning for facilities, for these flexible facilities that can serve multiple functions. Hopefully, the capital markets will unfreeze sometime soon.
They'll come back. We know markets are cyclical, right? What goes down must go up, right? In addition to what goes up must come down. Well, I'm hoping that we can sort of talk a little bit more about the importance of planning, because when we have a downturn or a slowdown in certain activities, it's a good chance for us to sort of get our ducks in a row. So, Ed, do you want to say any more about the zoning piece? This is one of the key tools that we have in the toolkit, and we'll be interested to get your feedback on this. But again, I want to underscore this, and I'd like to have Ed talk about it a little bit more because of the importance of something as fundamental as zoning.
In couple sentences, have flexible zoning that allows several things. As companies change, I might increase the number of engineers, I might increase the number of the manufacturing. Also allow, we're worried about losing industrial land. We should densify industrial zoning. Advanced food manufacturing plants are now 4 stories. 80% of the East Bay would not allow a 4-story advanced manufacturing in their industrial zone. The next thing is berms. Why do we have all this green landscaping, 30%? Get rid of, make it hardscape, increase the density on the site. And then again, the permit process, allow flexible. No one anticipated the Apple Watch or 5 other things. So planning is yesterday. So it should be flexible to allow future flexibility within zoning.
Joe, do you want to talk a little bit about planning and your experience working with specific plans?
Yeah, we've talked about this in the past, and we find specific plans to be very beneficial. They get to the heart of what Ed just described as very broad zoning, and it gives developers and investors and tenants a very clear understanding of what can be done. And I think it gives city staffs, a blueprint, a better roadmap to structure permitting processes around. So, we would encourage the continued development of specific plans. I know they take time, but I think they're very beneficial.
Mike, I want to go back to the CEQA question, because we know that's another benefit of doing a specific plan is you have the opportunity to do programmatic EIR. We heard again and again from our focus group members that CEQA, particularly on the development side, that CEQA is very problematic. And that's one of the advantages. But could you talk a little bit more about how you see perhaps that PG&E could be better integrated into a proactive planning process for industrial land preservation, but also, I would say, sort of forward-looking in terms of preservation sounds backward-looking, and really what we're looking towards is innovation. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah,
Oh, you
I think I'm good. Sound good? So when I hear about specific plans, from a PG&E perspective, one of the challenges is that specific plans are usually, it can take decades to implement. And so it's challenging for us where we have so much work to do right now on the capacity front that we can't be building for 10 to 20 years per se when we need to build for what the customer wants right now. And so that's definitely one of the challenges with specific plans. I will say I'm encouraged by some of the work like the California Public Utility Commission is having us do on our high VER proceeding, but one of those is community engagement. And so that gives an opportunity where right now we're working through how can we intake that information, like I mentioned when I had my growth forecast, how can we take that information in and then use it to actually inform the load growth that we are regulated to use. So to where rather than not having that specific application come in because you're not turning in a new business application for something that's happening in 20 years. So rather than that be informing what we're building for, we can at least say, I know that this community wants that life site that's building in this area, because they still are asking. It's not, there's still applications for that. But I know that like the city wants to incentivize work in this area, so at least I can put some growth points there in my software and put some of the growth in that area. So that's something that comes to mind with specific plans.
Joe?
Yeah, I would just add, having power is definitely a competitive advantage. It's a critical point, when you ask what a company's asking for. I didn't mention power, but it goes almost without saying, it's a key piece. And it's not just a supply problem with power and the time it takes, it's a demand side issue too. And maybe they're interrelated, but we often see tenants and their representatives, asking for tremendous amounts of power when in fact they'll maybe only use a quarter of that. But I can understand sometimes why they ask for the big buffer, because it does take a long time to get. But so somehow, somewhere, I don't have the immediate answer here, but if we could work more with the utilities, more with, the create planning around power, because time is money, power is important, it is a competitive advantage, and these companies need it, but they don't always need as much as I think they do.
Ed, go ahead.
Just briefly, my day job is attracting tenants or retaining tenants. So if I'm a regional national tenant looking at 10 metros in the western United States, and I have to have my business open in 9 months, and I hear 2 years, I go to where 9 months is. So again, as Joe mentioned, we have to invest now in this power infrastructure.
So that's a good segue to my next question, which is really for all three of you, which is how, as a region, can we have collaboration that allows us to be forward-thinking, but allows us to have time as money, and allows us to continue to be competitive? So I think maybe, Mike, you can start out with how we can envision maybe working with PG&E differently or more effectively going forward as a region, as part of our ecosystem.
Yeah, definitely. I think two things that we've been working on in the last year on that space, and it's one is that community engagement that I mentioned. So an opportunity for cities and counties to provide information to, say, their government affairs representative at PG&E, they can then find its way into our process. And then also for large companies, if you do have growth forecasts, is working with your account rep, your large account rep, to then say, like, PG&E, here is what my roadmap looks like for the next 10, 20 years, and then we can look to how we're going to serve that in the long term and actually build towards it. And we do have a challenge today, and we do, as far as the pipeline of work that we have, but I want to say 2 or 3 weeks ago, the governor signed SB 410 into law, and that's going to, for us, create the opportunity for a balancing account on our side and let us really hopefully open up the floodgates of capacity work that we really need to do.
Great, that's great. Joe, from a regional perspective, how do we translate time into money? and collaborative?
You know, I'm just thinking out loud here, but I'm thinking, you know, the county, the East Bay EDA, can we help lead more of these specific plan processes across the regions and help cities develop these plans more quickly and consistently? You know, I know cities and their permitting processes are also competitive advantages to the extent they can make them more quick. And so, you know, and each city wants to attract businesses to their city. So, but maybe we as the East Bay EDA and Alameda County can help facilitate some of these planning processes to share information that would be beneficial to developing them more quickly.
Great. And Ed, in terms of collaboration at the regional level?
Chime in and agree with Joe. Maybe EDA, this should be part of our mandate. It is. Maybe we should emphasize it more working with the cities. But we also should think of as a region. If Concord lands a big tenant we call a whale, the 10 surrounding cities benefit. So EDA helped when Tesla went into the old Army Motors facilities. The reason they went there was an existing ecosystem of suppliers. So Amazon and Tesla has a 4-hour rule of delivery. So the fob manufacturer was in San Leandro, battery pack cover person was in Hayward, et cetera, et cetera. So therefore, if a big tenant lands in a given city, the surrounding ecosystem cities that. So cities should cooperate in attracting these tenants and doing what it takes for that. And so maybe EDA should be along with the other Tri-Valley Innovation, East Bay Leadership Council, be helping with the cities to organize this as a region, because we're competing with 50 other regions around the world and the country.
Great.
Great point.
Yeah, right, okay. Any final thoughts that you want to share today with our audience? Yeah, and then we're going to open it up to questions from the audience.
We should plan tomorrow, yesterday, for what we should be doing with future innovation. So I once gave a Jetson speech. Jetsons were supposed to be 100 years from now, in the 1960s. 70% of it is today. So how is Livermore Airport, Byron Airport, Buchanan Airport, and Hayward Airport becoming freight delivery? How are we taking on drone delivery? And how are we utilizing highways at night for truck delivery? By the way, it's nice to have walkable cities, but where do you put the trucks to unload? Right. So people forget that when it gets to your door, it was a truck. So how do we utilize highways at night? How do we have better landing? So we should start thinking of the future, because if they're already testing autonomous delivery in other parts of the country. So what are we doing to facilitate that with zoning? And think of all the jobs for maintaining these intense robots. What are we doing with our education system to create educational certificates, to create workforce infrastructure for this?
Great point. I want to give a shout out to MTC, which is also understands that along with power, roads, and logistics, connections are probably some of the most important systems that we could do to really facilitate this innovation in the East Bay. So MTC is starting to sort of inch its way towards having a more proactive role also in economic development without doing the traditional activities associated with business attraction, expansion, location. But just again, understanding that the backbone of infrastructure is what makes land work, and land is what actually makes business work. So we're really starting from the ground up in a way that's very exciting in this region. And strategic economics works all over the country, and we haven't seen this kind of collaboration start to emerge. So I hope you all leave sort of inspired and invigorated by what your region is doing. So with that, I would like to open it up to questions from the audience. I like to call this the chump part of the presentation, because it's Tappan Brothers. So yes, sir, please introduce yourself and ask your question.
Hi, good morning. I'm Timothy Burrows. I'm Executive Director of Stop Waste, which is the Alameda County Waste Management Authority. Speaking of innovation, I heard Danny mention microgrids at the port as a way of creating energy independence. I heard in the PG&E presentation the long lead times for expanding centralized power and distributing that power. So I'm wondering what role microgrids could play in enabling some of the expansion of the facilities that we want to expand into to enable those facilities to operate more independently of the main grid? Is there an opportunity there to accelerate distributed clean electricity in a way that maybe can shortcut some of the timeline associated with the centralized grid? Thank you.
Yeah, great question, and I've definitely come across that in your industry. You know, one thing, everybody wants to be resilient, but then when you see the price tag of resiliency, you rethink it, right? So, you know, for example, like I'd love to have a power wall in my garage, but then I only have one power outage in the last year and where I am at. And so the cost of an outage is not that expensive to me versus if you were somewhere else and you had numerous outages. So everybody wants to be resilient, but then we need to think about what's the value stack of that storage. And so when I mentioned load profile as a piece of like what we look at as far as optimizing capacity, I think that's a big opportunity for the microgrid space, because you might want the microgrid to be for resiliency, but then you might need it for capacity. And so if you have a peaky operation, you may actually want to smooth out your load profile, and by bringing down your peak load and getting more to like 100%, closer to 100% load factor, it's easier for us to deliver that capacity because it's a lower amount. It's better for you as a customer from a demand charge perspective, and it's better for the entire rate base of PG&E because we're driving more energy through less infrastructure.
So yes. To microgrid. It's a sign. Okay, next up, yes.
Hi, good morning, Allison Greenlee, Economic Development County. Thank you so much, Dena, and congratulations East Bay EA on the Rizzling East Bay project. Really excited at the findings and looking forward to delving into them further. I guess just a question about, maybe more of a question for you, Dena, and the panel is, given that the Industrial Lands Toolkit is now here, what are next steps, especially given what we're hearing from the panel in terms of adoption by cities and counties?
Well, I don't think the toolkit is intended to be adopted by anybody. It's intended to be a resource. But I think it also, as Ed and Joe are saying, also gives East Bay EDA and all of you ideas about how we can work better together to do more planning. And one of the things that I know about regional collaboration is that case making is a huge part of this, the storytelling. And I think just even making the case for why do a specific plan, or why bring PG&E in earlier in the process, or any of those kinds of things can be very helpful in then advancing what happens at the local level. So I'm hoping that this is just a waypoint in an ongoing effort to again make the East Bay stronger, and to really, I want to underscore Allison's role in Contra Costa County, because the northern waterfront represents such a significant amount of land supply in the East Bay, but has been so underutilized in terms of infrastructure connections and so forth and so on. So I think there's a lot of thinking that will come out of this process, and it's really up to all of you to determine in what direction that can go. I also want to say that the tools on the toolkit, the reason that we made this a website and not another old school backward looking PDF is because it allows us to continue to update quickly and efficiently and to add information as we go. So we see this as a learning tool for all of us to continue to improve our practices. And I'm already thinking, oh, I should go back and think about that tool in the planning part of the toolkit about bringing PG&E in early on. So there are a lot of lessons. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Good morning, Linda Miller with Medallion Landscape. My questions to Joe and Ed, are the days of 5 days in the office dead and we'll never see that, or?
5 days in the office, yes, I think are dead. I'm an advocate of being in the office, particularly for young people. I think it's a great way to learn and collaborate and build relationships, but I just don't see us going back to 5 days in the office with the technology we have. But I think for these manufacturing companies, there is a greater need for people to be together and in the office and doing benchtop work and doing prototype manufacturing. And so, we still need to think about how we plan those spaces to have, a regular population. But for office, pure office, no, I don't see that.
Echoing Joe, so for instance, right now we're averaging about 50%. If we get to 70%, let's say Nirvana, that means 12 million feet in the East Bay of office space being underutilized. So that's going to be one of the consequences. And as Joe said, by the way, the world still works. If I work 25 hours a week versus my competitor who works 60 hours a week, I'm going to lose. So I don't care where you work, you still got to put the hours in. And it's also a white collar elitist thing. I mean, nurses can't work at home. Teachers can't work at home. Manufacturing can't work at home. And it's hard to have supervisor meetings and do everything you can. So it's really a white collar thing, and what's going to happen, unintended consequences, robotics. AI is going to kill a third of those office jobs. By the way, if you could work at home, you could also be offshore. So in my industry, a lot of research is done in the Philippines and Thailand now, and no longer in the office. That's jobs gone out the door. So by the way, AI, so far we've had an earthquake on my watch, then it told me I'm not standing enough. But AI requires intense electricity. So where are we planning? So the AI is one of the resurrection industries that fill up this office space. Where is the electric power for all this energy?
Yeah, I think that the answer to your question is it's very industry dependent, right? And we'll see, but not soon. And again, I think this is the need to be proactive and to really embrace the reality that we're looking forward at, rather than thinking we're going to go backward to what was. I keep telling my young staff, I'm embracing this. It's good, right? Okay, other questions? Yes, sir.
Yes, good morning. I'm Bob Getch. I'm the Executive Director of Be a Mentor. Be a Mentor pairs adults with kids as advocates, coaches, mentors, guides. Kids are our future. That's what we're talking about today, is the future of the East Bay. We would welcome partnership with EDA members, businesses who would engage their employees that are involved in all of these issues to be coaches and advisors to our kids. So if anybody's interested, we'd love to talk to you.
Great. Please stand up by the door and hand out your business cards, okay?
We actually have a table out here.
Okay, great.
Hello, my name is Mark Vaughn with MCE. I want to thank Mike for giving a presentation on the transmission and distribution grid. We work a lot with our customers. We get a lot of concerns about the slow time of energization as well as interconnection. Mike, I've given you a magic wand. How would you solve the significant delays? What solution would you
Oh, that's a loaded question.
Best for last.
Yeah. I think too, I wish everything could be made, I wish we could compress that timeline. So I want to say in the beginning of my career, which wasn't that long ago, but at the beginning of my career, today, I could say, I think we need to reconductor this 1 mile of line, and we would do it next year. And it wasn't much thought about that. That hasn't been the case for the last few years. That's been driven by a number of things. That's been driven by wildfire mitigation efforts across the state. It's been driven by increased permitting challenges. It's been driven by materials, and it's been driven by some operational inefficiencies. And so I would like to see, with a magic wand, all of that go away. I wish we could design the jobs faster, get the material faster, have better throughput on our operations, and get shovels in the ground faster. And let's make wildfires go away too. It's a magic wand.
And climate change is another one of those things we're gonna have to embrace rather than imagine is gonna go away. Next, yeah.
Hi, Tony Gomez from GoBiz. I'm curious to hear from the developers about brownfield cleanup. We discussed the northern waterfront. I'm just interested to hear what you're hearing from your clients and how you think about those brownfield cleanup projects. What policies, what changes do we need at the state and local level in order to move those projects along and really repurpose those spaces?
I mean, I never find them as scary as some may think they are. They can be the boogeyman to those not in the know. So education is a big piece of it, but I think it's like permitting. It's speed in the process. So, if you take on a big brownfield site, it feels like you can take, to infinity to get resolution. I worked on a site for over 15 years, and I was just probably half of the process of getting through the cleanup. So it's time, but again, I think if, my experience with some of the agencies more recently has been, them wanting to work with us and find more efficient solutions if we as well are very transparent and amenable to those solutions, and let's get this done, and let's, not everything has to be packed up and shipped off to a landfill. There are other ways to mitigate, but I think it's not the boogeyman that everybody thinks it is.
Agree totally with Joe. The other thing too is division of kind of uses on top of the hazardous waste. So in the case of the northern waterfront, if you're not going to live on it, you can put industrial on top of it. So Oakland Logistics Center out in the Highway 4, 2.1 million feet, is built on the former Dow Chemical. And if you ate the dirt, you die. But you put non-habitable structures, as we quote, on top of it. So the northern waterfront should be developed where we have ocean-going port docks. Two is, what if that ship coming from Stockton or the railroad containing the almonds and all the other fruit stopped at the northern waterfront, did the advanced food manufacturing, by the way, granola is advanced food, where you combine 5 things together, and then assembled it, and then shipped it out of the Port of Oakland or Richmond. So again, there's a lot of that land should be utilized, and we need education, as Joe said.
Thank you. Brandon Cardwell, City of Livermore. I wonder if Joe and possibly I could say more about the amenities and creating new kinds of industrial districts. We're in the middle of a general plan update right now and potentially adding over 1,000 new acres of industrial land to the eastern part of our city, depending on how our community decides to feel about that. But how should we be thinking about the experience of being in that district?
It's the live, work, and play, in close proximity. So how do we better integrate and make things closer together, more dense, go up instead of out, but build near existing resources, existing infrastructure, existing transit infrastructure, existing amenities. I think thoughtful planning can make these different industries coexist. We do need trucks, but I think, as Ed said, we can move trucks at night or at different times. So, they need to be very well integrated. People who are working at a manufacturing plant want to be able to walk to get a good cup of coffee and lunch just like the person in the office. So, we really need to not think of these districts or these amenities by industries, but apply them to all industries.
Not too much to add. Increased density where you already have the commercial districts, and then the market will, with increased housing, ironically, because the more housing, then the more retailers have sales per square foot. So at the end of the day, increase density and allow flexible zoning so I can put my coffee shop next to the advanced manufacturing.
We have time for maybe a couple more.
Anybody else?
Hattie and Beverly.
Thank you. I have a curiosity about how you would advise policymakers in Solano County about the tech city. It's kind of been in the news and it's an interesting concept. I'd just like to hear your thoughts on that.
This is Flannery and Associates. I mean,
Why not, right? It's on all our minds. Yes.
I'm curious. I mean, I would engage. I would, find out more. I would, not resist, and if somebody wants to invest, that can be beneficial. So I would just want to know more and try to engage very actively and openly with the group. But that's about all I know about it.
Ed?
Well, two things. By the way, it's an indictment against the Bay Area for not building enough housing. So it's, if I have to take 5 years to get a 300-unit project approved in the Inner Bay, well, that's a hassle. So therefore, go to Greenfield, unfortunately. Now, on the other hand, the opportunity to create a new city. By the way, there hasn't been a big new city in the United States above 100,000 people since 1954 when planning commissions were invented. So cities grow naturally, free market. So therefore, here's the opportunity, unlike Naval Station, 20 years, here's an opportunity to have parks, education establishment, housing, jobs next to it. So how do you plan for all that in mixed use and take it as an opportunity as opposed to just do Naval Station in my backyard?
We have the final question to Beverly Green.
Hello, this is a question from Mike McCarty. Beverly Green AC Transit, which was just named Outstanding Public Transit System in the entire nation. So, as you know, the California Air Resources Board has mandated that we move to zero emission by 2040. Can you tell me a little bit about what PG&E is doing to make sure there is enough to power what we need in the Northern California area to be able to meet that unfunded mandate?
Yeah. Great question. I'm going to be repetitive to some points, a little bit more detail. So one thing is I mentioned in our forecast, the IBER load growth forecast, the last year that we did it, it was the first year that it was including a high electrification forecast in it. And so what that means is we're actually forecasting out 13 years is the limit of the CEC's IBER growth. So we're forecasting out 13 years to see what that electrification looks like. And what we see is after we account for the new business applications in the inner years, we see all of our load curves just do this, right? They shoot up. And so we're having to plan for that and build for that. And so I also mentioned SB 410 and the balancing account is an opportunity for us to increase our pipeline of work. So use that forecast, justify the jobs, and actually have a rate recovery mechanism to actually build the capacity. So there's that piece as far as how our process allows for it now and opportunities in front of us. On the individual project level, what we do is, it's like, if you come to me with an application today and say, I have this many chargers and this is what I think what the peak load I need is, we're then gonna come back and say, okay, what's your daily load profile? What do we expect of your operations? And we're gonna need to start working together more to understand what that actually load profile looks like, because every industry is a little bit different. Like for waste collection, like apparently their operations is gonna be completely different than for moving people versus moving goods. All of that's gonna be slightly different, and so we're all gonna learn together and inform each other on what to expect for those load profiles and how we can actually integrate it all within the grid.
All right. Let's give it up for our panelists. We want to thank you.